Last week, I posted on LinkedIn that I wanted to help someone create a free app for their Google Sheet. So I've been using this tool called Zeit, and it makes it really easy to create an app interface over a Google Sheet backend. And I said, just reach out, comment, and send a direct message or whatever, and I will help one of you create an app for free from your Google Sheet spreadsheet. As it turns out, I got several people who were interested, and one of them is Joel. So Joel initially thought he needed a Zeit app for his Google Sheet, but then he realized the real pain point was that he needed data from one system to go to his Google Sheet. And once we understood what the pain point was, we talked and said, yeah, let's go for it, and we're creating this video. So I'm going to jump on a call with Joel. I'm going to have him explain what his use case is, and I'm going to build an automation for him using NADN to solve that problem. It should be an interesting case study of how you take a raw client issue and figure out the best way to solve it. So I hope you enjoy this video.
My name is Joel, and I'm running finance and operations for a e-commerce company. And I built this little custom ERP thing for managing purchase orders, inbound shipments, etc. You can see it here. We're using a software called Flieber for planning our shipments and like demand planning and whatnot. Flieber has a connection with Google Sheets. So it is looking for information regarding all the purchase orders that are currently outstanding, which exists in this Supabase database I've created. I've already built this query to get some of that information for Flieber. So you can see this is getting me the destination, the quantity, etc. for each of the POs. But the main thing that I'm looking for help with is how would I just get that data from Supabase into this Google Sheet easiest and potentially have the updates happen in real time. So whenever a PO is created in Order Tool, then that can push over to the demand planning software, which will then, say you don't need to order those units again because you've already made the order. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. And the reason you want to send the data here to the Google Sheet instead of to your Order Tool app is the data from Flieber comes in here.
Yeah, so Flieber is kind of this whole demand planning software. So what it does is it tells you how many units you need to buy. So we've got all of our forecasting in here and stuff like that, and it'll say like healthy or replenish now. This we've thought about trying to build, but like this would take a long time to build. It takes in all the data from Amazon and Shopify and lets you plan out your sales forecasts and stuff like that. So what's easiest is we're just integrating with it and telling it like what we have on the way, what's on order. And yeah, it integrates based on this sheet. So anything that's in this sheet will incorporate and say like, you don't need to order this unit, for example, because you've already ordered it on PO60. You know what I mean?
Oh, I see. Yeah. I thought you were saying that Flieber sends the data here, but what you're saying is Flieber reads the data from this sheet.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And you want to keep it updated so it has an accurate forecast. And then once that data is in Flieber, would it be useful in any way to get it back to Order Tool based on the forecasts, or?
Well,
it might be difficult to make an interface as useful as the one they've already built.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think in terms of getting the POs like back in, I'm okay with our current method, which is basically just like you take what Flieber suggests to buy and then we go ahead and create those orders. Also, this connection like from Supabase to Sheets will be helpful with our cash forecasting as well, because very similarly, like writing a query is not going to be too tough. But like if you look at our purchase orders, we know how much we have on order, how much we've already paid on deposit. So like how much are we going to have to pay? And so once we build this, then, with NAN, I'll understand how to also do it for the cash forecast. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the data for Order Tool comes from Supabase. Can we take a look at those tables real quick?
Yep. So the only tables that are going to be relevant for us is actually really just like these purchase order lines. So you can see, because like anytime something's on shipment, like the only thing that really matters from Flieber's perspective is like how many of those units have been received, which is why like you can look at, this is the order quantity, right? And then
Uh-huh.
this is the order, the amount that has been received. I don't have any that are showing up as received yet, but the query, it takes order quantity minus received, which
Okay.
is basically like that's the amount that's outstanding that's still on its way to us. And that's what Flieber needs to know, so we don't end up ordering it twice.
Okay. So Flieber needs to know the outstanding quantity, not the number received.
That's right. They need to know basically the net of, yeah, order
Right.
quantity
Okay.
minus, yeah.
Okay. Can you show me an example of how you would update this manually today?
Yeah, I made this query and then I just export that to CSV and then that goes over here. So this is raw from
Okay.
Supabase. And then I just massage it a little bit to get it. I just paste it in here and then I set this status to open and then I create this kind of concatenation to create this fake like purchase order
Unique
number.
ID.
Yeah, because Flieber needs a separate destination for like a purchase. So like it needs a specific destination. Now, in our case, and this is part of what's set up in this query, any SKU that's ending in .amz is an Amazon SKU. So yeah, that's logic that's happening on the back end there where that destination is getting set. Either it's Amazon or it's store out. So if you look
Okay.
at the products, there. I've got the SKU, but I've also got the name, and this is what the query is using. It's like if it sees .amz, and it's like, okay, the destination for that is Amazon, and
Okay.
that's how this query is spitting out a destination for us. And then yeah,
A couple more questions. One is, you said that you're copying the data from the order tool tab into connected to Flieber. Is that correct? Or do you have a
yes,
formula?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just copy pasting it in and then doing that concatenation thing.
Okay. My understanding is because you're tracking the number received from that PO, I'm not sure if it's all received at once or whatever, but you're probably having to update that PO over time, not just a one time when that line item is created, put it in here, but you have to keep it updated until the received is zero
That's
or
right.
the net is zero.
Yeah, so like we create these inbound shipments and then we create item receipts, and the item receipts are what updates that purchase order received value. You know what I mean?
Okay, and that updates in Supabase automatically.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting close here. I noticed that in your connected to Flieber sheet, you have these receiving items above the ones. So
Yeah.
are those things that can be, those are not from the order tool sheet, right?
Yeah. So these are gonna have to like we're gonna have to have room for them. Basically, what happens is like in order tool, we might have 1,000 units and then we'll mark that as received in Amazon. But maybe 500 of those units are still kind of in receiving status at Amazon. They haven't actually been put in the on-hand inventory. So I manually create this so that Flieber knows that these units they're still going to be deposited soon. They're just not technically in an open PO or like inbound to us or whatever. They're just in a receiving category in Amazon. Yeah.
All right. One thing that you need to be mindful of with using Google Sheets as the destination for some data is that you will often run into rate limit errors. So basically, the Sheets API has pretty low rate limits.
Yeah.
And there's not a ton you can do about it. You can kind of set up a project and request increased limits and stuff, but it's a little bit of a weird, shaky system. So
Yeah.
at this number of records and even for quite a bit more you should be fine, but that's just something to keep in mind that will happen. And usually what you do is you just kind of slow down the workflow, add some wait steps or a loop or something to reduce the amount of calls that you're making in a short period of time. But yeah, I've definitely run into that with some clients with Google Sheets. It sounds like Flieber can't pull from something else, so this is kind of your option, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, I mean, Flieber does have a API, but this seems to be the easiest way to get data into it.
Okay. If you run into issues in the future, that might be worth pursuing using the API. But let's just start with this and keep it simple. Okay.
Yeah, so like our item receipts don't happen that often. Like we might get a shipment in like once every couple of days. So if we were able to trigger the refresh or the update based on like the creation of a PO or the creation of an item receipt, then it won't be high volume data being pushed. You know what I mean? But if we need to simplify and like just poll every like 10 minutes or whatever, then that's where you might run into that problem. But
Right.
yeah.
Okay, let's try to do that. So you said that there's a creation of a PO as well as an item receipt. The item receipt will affect the PO number of items received, right? So,
Yeah.
okay. I know that one way that we could do this is set up like an edge function on Supabase that calls NADN, calls a webhook whenever there's a created item in one of these tables.
Yeah.
We could probably pursue that, and that's probably the best option. I'm not very advanced with Supabase, so I would probably use AI quite a bit to figure that edge function out. So that's one option. The other option is that we pool frequently from Supabase, but we check the created date and updated date of these records and just only trigger the rest of the flow if those are recent. And that's a way that we can avoid overloading Google Sheets, because Supabase is not going to have a problem with that. And that way I don't have to just like muddle through the edge function option. So we'll need a couple things. Could you go ahead and share this spreadsheet with me and share it with geosegar@gmail.com? And then we'll need to connect Supabase to NADN, need to connect Sheets to NADN, and we'll want to do that through your credentials.
Okay.
So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Could you quickly pop into the chat your query that you already wrote?
Yeah. And there's that query.
Thank you. I'll test out this query. Got it. You can still see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Pool latest PO data. Okay. And then question. So when you first get a purchase order, do you also get item receipt immediately, or is that later because you do a purchase order and then the receipt comes in, I'm guessing?
Yeah, so it's later, yeah.
Okay. So we're going to need to create a query for the item receipts as well as the PO.
Well, the PO data will update when the item receipt is created because the PO has a received field for it. Yeah.
Okay, and then do you have a updated date timestamp?
Let me check. I don't have a updated field.
Okay, so it would be ideal if you add in updated at timestamp, because that way we can query based on that.
Yes.
What process updates it? Like, where is that coming from?
I think that it's front end app side. Like when I create an item receipt, then there's a query that gets triggered on the front end that basically tells it to like update the received quantity.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, in order to get a like updated at field, I'd have to build a bunch of things on the front end so that anytime a change gets pushed from retool, that column gets updated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you should be able to use a database trigger. Is it purchase order updated, or is it just purchase order line that's updated?
Purchase order line would get updated, yeah.
Okay, so you have the trigger of the purchase order being created that puts in the initial record, and then you have purchase order line being updated.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I could probably run the query from here too, but you can run these queries from Supabase.
Okay.
Basically, what this does is add the updated at timestamp, and then it also adds a trigger to the database to update that timestamp anytime the purchase order line is updated.
Okay. Okay, we now have updated at timestamp. Okay, that's cool. And the timestamp is right now because we just created it.
Right.
Let me see if I can change one and see what happens. Yeah, it does it immediately. That's cool.
Yeah, database triggers are really nice because you don't have to build in a lot of stuff.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. That'll be handy for lots of reasons.
Okay, so I'm grabbing the schemas so I can just see on my end what columns are available in here. Okay, so we've got purchase order ID, placed order date. Do you have a created at, or is it placed order date as the best date option?
Okay, wait. So what was the purpose of the date?
I need to pull recently created orders as well as recently updated purchase order lines.
Okay, I think probably the purchase order table, we could just give it that same updated at field, and then we could use that potentially.
Well, let's do a created at for purchase order because we're not trying to check for. So let me get the query real quick. Okay, if you don't mind, I'll just go ahead and send that from here.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, yeah, it's showing up there. And that's going to be, for now, the same date, I think, for all of them. But you can also test creating a record to see if that shows up properly.
Would it make sense to just put created at the line level and then we'd only have to point to one table?
Yeah, that's a good point. I need to examine this query to see which pieces are coming from the purchase order. So the PO number. So we've got the PO number and ID from here.
Yeah, I guess we're going to be pulling the PO number from the PO header level anyway, so.
Okay, so the ID is available, but not the purchase order number, which is fine. But either way, we can use the purchase order line created at and updated at to. So let's go ahead. I'll just add that alter table over here, purchase order line, making sure it's line singular. Yeah. Okay, so we should have a created at and an updated at in the purchase order line table now.
Nice.
Okay, so now we're going to modify this query to, this is just a starting point. Yeah, that should work. So this should pull all of the records. Yep, because the created at is new, so it should be the same for all of them. And then, do you want to go ahead and create a record right now in the purchase order line manually?
Yep.
Maybe in both the purchase order and purchase order line, connect them together. And then the timestamp for that will be more recent than the other ones by just a few minutes.
Yeah.
And we can just double check this query.
Okay.
And let me know when you finish.
I'll just create it from the app because that'll be easier to link them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, just created it.
Okay, so I'm gonna check this. Sweet, I only got the one record for Sprint Gkit.
Yep.
10 quantity. Sweet. Okay, so that's working. I'm gonna make this a 3-minute. So we've got pool latest PO data. So this is created at, but we also need to check updated at. So add, I think it's actually pretty simple. So let me just do this manually. Okay, all right, this should pull any created or updated records recent. I guess technically updated will work as well because it'll be set to the same time as created at. So just for simplicity, let's maybe just use that one. That makes sense. Okay, so we're pulling POs. The logic is that the purchase order line has been created or updated recently, which means it was either created or there's been a new item receipt. Now we need to sync those over to Google Sheets. What I'm going to do is quickly do one with all of the records so we can update Google Sheets with the new data model.
Yeah.
And then we'll do, so we've got 110 items. And then for Google Sheets, we're going to connect to shipments, order tool data. I like to turn minimize API calls on. This is just whenever there's no gaps. I think it just allows NADN to do less API calls to do what it needs to do.
Okay.
And then we're going to add under here, will I break anything if I go ahead and replace this sheet with the new data?
No. Connected to Flieber is the only sheet that actually pulls to
does anything. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to toss those out and then refresh. We're going to match on the unique ID that we've created. Just drag that in. NADN has gotten easier to use ever since I started. I started using it probably 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more. Update. Back then you couldn't even do any drag and drop. It was all like typing, which is fine. Okay, so this should add them all in here.
Nice.
And the way your current workflow, you're currently copy pasting them into Flieber. My understanding is you need to keep these receiving items, and are you going to have more in the future, or is it just these?
Just those, but like before we order, I'll need to like update that. One thing that I could do potentially is like take those receiving items and put them in a separate tab and then query them Like we could potentially take all the data from Supabase, put it in the order tool data, and then all this data, put it in another tab, and then write a query in Google
Yeah,
Sheet so that they don't like overwrite each other.
that's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and do that. It's been a while since I've done that, but that's why we have AI to help. I'm going to just call this receiving items. Is that okay?
Yeah.
We're going to copy. So we've got those there. I'm going to do this on a test sheet before I mess with the Flieber sheet.
I have
so
another meeting in 5 minutes. Just.
Oh, okay. So I'll need to do some of this offline, but we're going to have these two, and then we're just going to need to map the right items. I'm noticing the receiving ones have a delivery date, or they all have the same delivery date.
Yeah.
Is that intentional?
Yes, it is intentional. It's just an arbitrary date. And it's fine for it to even just stay as June 1st.
For all of them? Okay.
Yeah, Flieber just needs a date. Because I'm not using Flieber to tell me when units will arrive. I'm using it to tell me like whether or not I should order and how much.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that we need to keep in mind here. So we've got inbound shipment ID, destination equals delivery, date equals, and PO number from sheet 2, and then status is open for all of them. Well, let's see if it one-shots that query.
Boom. Nice.
It doesn't have the items from receiving, and it's pulling a lot more than actually exist. So we'll need to tweak that a little bit. Okay, I know you have to go, so thanks for jumping on. I'm going to finish this up on the other sheet.
Okay.
I'm going to finish up the workflow, and I'm going to record that process. And
Perfect.
then when I'm done and I have a working MVP, I'll just set up another call with you to walk through that, make sure everything's good.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much. Talk to you later.
Okay, have a good one. Bye. So I've got this query here that needs to be updated a little bit. It's not currently pulling in the items from receiving items. There is the correct amount of items from order tool data. It's also adding records where there actually are none, basically just as long as the sheet goes. So we're going to put in a couple of those issues. Query is missing matching columns. Exactly. Give it a screenshot. Okay, I'm seeing that. Let's double check the number of records here. The count is 110, which is correct. And we've got number of records here, 17, and there should be, 17 records. We've got the query working, and if we hit up our workflow, I had made a few notes in here just for building. So I've got a unique ID in the query. We don't need to mark items completed because we are pulling based on updated at and created at, which won't be updating once that item has been fully received, so we can ignore that. So we're using the filter. It's funny because Joel thought of the same thing as I did independently, but this is a good way. Basically what this allows us to do is we can update data in here with our automation, and he can basically update items separately over here, and then they'll show up in his Flieber connected spreadsheet. So there's some benefits to that. And then can we trigger the refresh or update based on the creation of a PO or item receipt? Yes, we are doing that based on created at, updated at. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this note. And all we need to do really is add a schedule trigger. So I'm going to add a schedule trigger, and this will be set to, we're going to go for every 10 minutes for now. He can do more frequently, honestly, and it wouldn't be an issue. Actually, why not? Let me just do a quick calculation. So assuming he's on the 2500 execution plan, we're gonna do, so there's 60 minutes in an hour times 24 hours times approximately 30 days. Okay, that will be too frequently. So we're gonna do 15. That's gonna be 4 times per hour. And I think that should be, oh, that's close. All right, every 18 minutes. So that's one issue with polling based trigger. If he wants to have a faster workflow here, what we would do is add a database trigger that runs an edge function to then call the NADN webhook. Can I add a database table is updated? I don't know what database triggers are capable of, but I'm pretty sure you would need an edge function to actually make an external call. Okay, it says that you can do this. That's very interesting. So I'm just going to send this to Joel, and I'm going to create a webhook trigger. The funny thing is you actually have to be careful because sometimes this approach is actually going to be more intensive than a polling trigger. If he has a ton of updates all the time, that will trigger a ton of webhooks and run up his executions. But based on what he's told me, it's not very frequent. It's like one every 2 days or so. And even if it's much more than that, that's going to be a lot less than pooling the data every 15 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to do a post here. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the workflow and just disconnect this piece, grab the production URL. Okay, let's try this with the endpoint. Okay, so we've got this test table. Let's try this endpoint. Table name is test ID and created at fields. So this should write us a thing. I kind of doubt this is going to work because it's talking about PL Python. I don't know if that's actually going to run in here. Yeah. Let's see if we can do it without using Python in here. So pgnet extension. Let's see if that works. Okay. Didn't have an issue. Let's go ahead and insert a row. 1, 2, 3. Set to now. And let's see if we got an execution. Well, that's promising. Wow, okay. That was a lot easier than I expected. Okay. In that case, we can probably just go ahead and run this for him because we have Postgres access. And the only thing is we're going to need to customize it. But basically, he wanted to update pretty quickly. And I could set this to run every 20 minutes, and the way we built it will be fine. But this is another way of doing this as well. So we need to customize this. Okay, let's see if we get what we need here. Let's just double check this for sanity. Create the function to build the payload and call the webhook. We need to create the function to build the payload and call the webhook. Declare product. Okay, these are different variable types. Begin and calculate the quantity. I think that's in this original query. And we actually don't want to do that because we need to know if the quantity reaches 0. So it's a good thing that we're checking this because that would have been an issue with the original query as well. Let's remove the condition. Get related data from the product. Select name, select PO number, into that variable, determine the destination, build the unique ID, construct the JSON payload, send the request, drop the old trigger if it exists, that's fine, create the new trigger. Okay, that all seems good. Let's go ahead and run that. So theoretically we should get that kind of data here. We're going to go ahead and create a test output. Save this, run this. Okay, so that might be an issue because we don't know a proper vendor ID. Alright, so what we need to do here is pull a valid row from these tables as sample data so that we can insert and make sure that we're using the valid schema. So what we're going to do is select top 1 and then from order line for our sample data. That should give us a valid row to insert, and then we can see if the webhook works. Alright, yeah, okay. So I'm gonna again change this to 90. So we're gonna go ahead and run this, and that should run successful execution here. Alright, here we go, SKU, quantity. Alright, so what we're gonna do is select all this, copy to editor this data, and then we're just gonna connect it, have both versions available in case he wants to switch between. So this is the polling approach, and this is the approach. Copy this over, and then all we're going to do is update the mapping. So unique ID here. That should fix all of them. Yeah, this will go ahead and run. It's already going to be working. And then I'm just going to run this just to double check. So this should go under order tool data and PO 90. Okay, I'm not seeing it. Okay, so we got PO 81, which is interesting because I'm pretty sure we did PO 90 here. We'll have to look into that. There might be some logic that I'm not catching that does that. Okay, so we got this. So PO81 showed up. Okay, looks good. We also have PO79 that he did earlier. Great. And then what I'm going to suggest to him is just to set up a error workflow. So we'll create an error workflow, and the trigger is going to be an error trigger. And then we can connect this to his Slack or whatever, and then save that, refresh this, and we can connect it as the error workflow. Okay, perfect. All right, this is ready for the client. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a call with him to just take a look at what we created and do a final test with him using his retool dashboard, creating an entry and making sure it shows up properly, and making sure also that if he updates the quantity on an existing item, that it will also update in the sheet. And then all we need to do is move this query into this connected sheet, and the rest should work from there. Okay, all right, so I wanted to just show you what I did. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I was about to set it up, and I realized I did some math, and I realized it would exceed your starter plan if you did a starter plan on NADN Cloud. If I did it less than like 18 to 20 minutes between data pools. And I know you mentioned it would be cool if it could come basically real time.
Yeah.
So I set up a database trigger for you so that theoretically whenever a new purchase order line shows up or is updated, it should come through as a webhook. I did a test, and I created a test purchase order and purchase order line. So you can go ahead and delete the one I did. It should be the latest one. But I would love for you to just do an end-to-end test starting from your retool dashboard and just make sure that it works properly, because I did notice one weird anomaly with my test.
You noticed a weird anomaly?
Yeah, I put in a certain PO number, and then the PO number that I saw come out looked different. So I just wanted to double check and make sure it's working as expected.
Okay, yeah. If you hard coded the PO number, then probably the automatic numbering system.
Took over. I was wondering if you had something like that. Nice.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I'll go ahead and create a PO then. So I'm just creating one now. Okay, I just created the purchase order.
Okay. All right. I see an execution come in here.
Should be PO
82, 200. Yeah. Nice. Okay.
And now,
can you update it to 100?
Yeah. Okay, I just updated that.
Okay, I see it came through, and it's updated in the sheet. Sweet, so it's working properly. It was the automatic numbering system that threw me off. So this is ready to go. The query, I got it working in this sheet, and it's combining the two items. There were some issues with the first version, but it got cleared up pretty quickly. So you can just copy this into your Flieber sheet when you're ready, and it'll replace all the content, of course.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, so you're saying that that query will replace the content, and then it's all going to be pretty much live from there.
Yep, and you'll have to delete the stuff for the query to actually replace it. So just to walk through a couple things with the solution here. So the database trigger, there is a function and a trigger, which in Supabase you can view those in the interface, and you can also use queries to find those. So if you ever need to make adjustments to those, you can do that through the interface or through queries. And it's basically just coded to look at purchase order lines, and if the created at or updated at changes, it'll send a webhook here. And if you run into any rate limit issues with the Google Sheet, that's very unlikely based on the volume that you talked about. But if you start seeing that the volume of like webhooks being sent is very high, then you might want to switch to polling, because it'll actually be less. But that's only if you were experiencing, like 10 per hour or more. So that's something to keep in mind. I just left the polling approach here in case you wanted to have that. I'm going to just call this order tool, purchase order line, created sheets. And with every NADN workflow, I always recommend setting up an error workflow. So under the settings, you can go choose an error workflow, and you first have to create that, and I created that for you. You just need to connect this to Slack or whatever you want to receive notifications on. If you do a fetch test event, it'll show you the data, and you can just map that. Like if you had send a message, so if you had a Slack message here, you could say, error with the workflow, and then just put in maybe the URL of the execution, and then by clicking that, you'll actually go directly to the execution and be able to see what happened.
Yep.
So you would just need to connect your credential and everything.
Okay. Yeah, that's
So
super.
Yeah, I'll hit save on that, and you can do that later. I also just put in an estimated time saved of 2 minutes. You can change that or take it out if you want, but it's kind of nice to have on the dashboard. It'll show you how much time you've saved over all of the executions.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty much
super
it.
cool. That's awesome. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay, well, one question. So I noticed in the revised flow, it's just like webhook to the sheet. It doesn't have that like query, like Postgres step or whatever. And so I'm curious, like, how that works functionally. So, like, does that mean that the data just gets, like, packaged, like, right in that webhook and sent to the sheet? And it's not actually, like, querying the database the same way?
Exactly. So the way it works is the database function has a query built into it. So you have the trigger, and the trigger runs the function. The function creates a payload with the different variable names that I gave it. And I already gave it the same query and said to basically use that query to package the information. So this is the exact same stuff that we would get out of the query. It's just doing the query on the back end for that one row before sending it.
So in terms of the PO lines, like let's say the received quantity changes to like 10, that query is set up to be like quantity minus received?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Let me see what the query is to get functions and see if we can just pull that up on the screen here. It's easier in the Supabase interface, but this should do. Okay. I believe it's called notify poll change. Let's see if this works. Yeah. So here is where the quantity value is the order quantity minus the received. So it declares the variables that we send in the webhook, and it gathers the data, and then it sends the post request.
That's awesome.
I'll just pop this in here, and you can keep that. Yeah, the main thing is I want to show an actual use case, like from beginning to end, what does it look like to take just a raw issue that the client has and figure out what the best solution is and build that. So I think it's kind of an interesting type of content. So thanks for being one of the early test cases.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Well, I'll talk to you later and we'll stay in touch.
Yep. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Bye. All right. So that was an end-to-end problem-solving session with Joel. I'm really grateful that he came on and brought this problem. It was pretty straightforward at the end of the day. We just wanted to get information from a database to Google Sheets, and that's pretty much all there is to it. And that's kind of an ideal scenario because if you have a database already, you have a lot of the tools that you need to build something like this, and then NADN is just a simple middleman. I mean, if you wanted, you could even build an edge function in Supabase that connects to the Google Sheets API to do the same thing, but here we're just simplifying it by using NADN because it has that pre-built connection to Google Sheets, and you don't have to worry about creating your own Cloud Console project and learning the API schema and all of that. But yeah, very interesting project to test. If you want to learn more about AI and automation and how you can use it to solve real business problems, keep following this channel. I'm going to be posting content like this, as well as more in-depth videos on specific platforms and how to get the outcomes that you want with them. So thanks for watching this video, and I hope that it was helpful to you.